In 793 on Lindisfarne, unarmed monks at prayer suddenly faced Viking warriors pouring from longships. What made this moment so horrifying, th?
In the summer of 793, longships slid onto the shore of Lindisfarne, a holy island off England's coast, and the Viking Age began in fire. The raiders stormed the monastery, cutting down monks and seizing gold and relics. Christian Europe had never seen anything like it. The scholar Alcuin wrote in horror, "Never before has such terror appeared in Britain as we have now suffered from a pagan race." He added that heathens had poured out the blood of saints around the altar. To Europe, these northern strangers seemed like a punishment from God. But here is what few understood at the time: the men from the north were not mindless monsters. They came from a complex, seafaring world. Their homeland was Scandinavia, modern Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, a land of deep fjords, dense forests, and long, dark winters. Most Norse were farmers and fishermen, living in long timber halls, raising cattle and barley on narrow strips of workable land. Historians believe growing populations, scarce farmland, and political rivalries pushed ambitious young men to seek wealth and fame overseas. The word Viking likely meant a pirate raid or expedition. To go Viking was to sail off in search of plunder and glory. Their society prized honor, loyalty to a chieftain, and daring. A warrior's reputation could outlive him in poems recited for generations. And they had one weapon that changed history: the longship. Sleek, light, and built from overlapping planks, it was a marvel of engineering. Its shallow hull could cross open ocean yet still glide up shallow rivers, letting raiders strike deep inland where no one felt safe. Driven by a single square sail and rows of oars, the longship could outrun and outmaneuver almost anything afloat. The Norse navigated by the sun, stars, coastlines, and the flight of birds, mastering waters that terrified other sailors. By the way, despite the legends, their helmets had no horns. That popular image was invented centuries later by artists and opera designers. After Lindisfarne, the raids multiplied. Monasteries in Ireland, rich and undefended, became favorite targets for their treasures and captives. In 841, Norse raiders built a fortified harbor on the River Liffey. That settlement would grow into the city of Dublin. Slavery was central to their trade. Captives from across Europe were sold in far-off markets, a brutal engine of Viking wealth. The raids grew bolder and reached the heart of the Frankish Empire, Charlemagne's mighty realm now weakening after his death. In 845, a Viking fleet sailed up the Seine and reached Paris itself, withdrawing only after being paid a fortune in silver. These payments, later called Danegeld, taught the Norse a lesson: threatening a kingdom could be as profitable as raiding a monastery. In 885, a vast fleet besieged Paris again. For nearly a year, its defenders held the walls in a desperate, grinding siege. But raiding was no longer enough. Around 865, the Vikings came to England not to plunder, but to conquer and stay. A massive force landed in East Anglia, the army the English called the Great Heathen Army. According to the sagas, it was led by the sons of the legendary warrior Ragnar Lothbrok, a figure blurring history and myth. One son, Ivar the Boneless, was remembered as a brilliant and merciless commander who outthought his Anglo-Saxon enemies. In 866, the Vikings captured York, the great northern city, and turned it into a stronghold of Norse power. Kingdom after kingdom fell. In 869, they killed King Edmund of East Anglia, later revered as a Christian martyr. The sagas claim they executed their enemies with a grisly ritual called the Blood Eagle, though many historians doubt it truly happened. By the 870s, only one English kingdom still stood against them, Wessex, in the south, and its young king, Alfred. Alfred's early reign was disaster. In 878, a surprise winter attack shattered his forces and drove him into hiding. He fled into the marshes of Athelney with a handful of men, his kingdom seemingly lost, hunted in his own land. But Alfred rallied. He summoned the men of Wessex and, at the Battle of Edington in 878, crushed the Viking army. The defeated Viking leader Guthrum agreed to peace, and, remarkably, accepted Christian baptism with Alfred standing as his godfather. A treaty divided England. The north and east became the Danelaw, ruled by Norse custom, while Wessex remained Anglo-Saxon. For this defense and his revival of learning, Alfred became the only English king ever called the Great. Meanwhile in Francia, one Norse warlord would win something no raider had before, a kingdom of his own, granted by a king. His name was Rollo. After years of raiding the Seine, he pressed the Frankish crown too hard to be ignored. In 911, King Charles the Simple struck a bargain. He granted Rollo coastal land in exchange for loyalty and defense. That land became Normandy, the land of the Northmen. Rollo and his followers settled, converted, and adopted the French tongue. It was a turning point. Within a few generations, these Norse settlers became the Normans, among medieval Europe's most formidable people. One of Rollo's descendants, William, would conquer England in 1066, proof of how far Viking ambition could reach. But the Vikings did not only sail west. Swedish Norsemen turned east, into the vast rivers of the Slavic lands. These Eastern Norse were called the Rus, a name historians link to the origins of Russia itself. They rowed and dragged their boats along the Volga and Dnieper rivers, trading furs, honey, amber, and slaves for silver. Their routes stretched all the way to the markets of the Caspian Sea and the glittering wealth of the Islamic world. In 860, a Rus fleet even attacked Constantinople, the mighty capital of the Byzantine Empire, shocking the Christian East. In time, the emperors hired Norse warriors as elite bodyguards, the famed Varangian Guard, loyal, fearsome, and richly rewarded. Yet perhaps the Vikings' greatest feats were not battles, but voyages into the unknown ocean, beyond all known maps. Around 870, they began settling Iceland, a remote volcanic island where they built a free society governed by an assembly, the Althing. From there, according to the sagas, a fiery, quarrelsome man named Eric the Red was exiled for killing his neighbors and sailed still farther west. Around 985, he reached a frozen land he named Greenland. It is said he chose the appealing name hoping it would draw settlers to follow him. His son, Leif Erikson, sailed even farther, and around the year 1000 reached the shores of North America. The Norse called it Vinland. For centuries it sounded like a saga fantasy, until archaeologists found proof. At L'Anse aux Meadows in Newfoundland, they uncovered a genuine Norse settlement, showing Vikings reached America 500 years before Columbus. By the 11th century, the Viking world was changing. Kings grew stronger, and Christianity spread across all of Scandinavia. In 1016, a Danish prince named Canute became king of England, and soon ruled Denmark and Norway too. His North Sea Empire made Canute one of Europe's most powerful rulers, a Viking descendant wearing a Christian crown. But the age that began at Lindisfarne would end on an English battlefield in 1066. The Norwegian king Harald Hardrada, a giant of a warrior who had served in the Varangian Guard, invaded northern England. At Stamford Bridge, the English king Harold Godwinson caught the Vikings by surprise and destroyed their army. Harald Hardrada fell in the fighting, and with him, historians say, the great age of Viking conquest came to an end. Yet the Vikings never truly vanished. They became the Normans, the Rus, and the ancestors of kingdoms and bloodlines across Europe. But how did fierce pagan raiders, in just 3 centuries, transform into Christian kings and the founders of modern nations. That story is still unfolding. Subscribe to World History Tales, and journey with us into the next chapter, where the sons of the North reshape a continent.